Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mile High Sports Today. I'm your host, Sean Drotar. Cody Rourke is here
What's
on
happening?
Tuesday, breaking down the Denver Broncos for us today. And Cody, of course, a good win for the Denver Broncos. A bit of a slow start, but they get it done. Obviously, out in Las Vegas for the first time ever in Vegas. It would have been 8 straight road losses for the Broncos. In fact, even prior to the move to Las Vegas, they get this one done, and then they put themselves in really good playoff position, playoff probabilities, and of course, you still have to get the job done.
Yeah.
But the Broncos' odds on making the playoffs are roughly now about 70%, and the drop off for the teams behind them, specifically the Colts after their loss, makes it basically the Broncos' spot to lose at this point. And I think for Broncos fans, obviously, not only is that very exciting, but it's probably something of a surprise based on the beginning of the season. The idea you'd have a rookie quarterback, that there were a lot of names on the defense that maybe weren't super famous across the board, but they're finding a way to get it done. And a lot of it will break down the whole situation over the course of the program. But a lot of it, of course, does revolve around Bo Nix, around the quarterback of the Denver Broncos, that in the last 5 games, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, doing what most coaches will tell you the most important job of the quarterback role is now at this point, and that is taking care of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think that 1 interception came against the Chargers week 6. So, I mean, it's been a while since obviously that's been the case. Bo's done a really good job of protecting the football. And look, the film review is up. So for those of you that are watching that didn't know that, the Broncos, Bo Nix, just once again, a very good performance. He's up once again for Rookie of the Week. Considering where the Broncos were at, 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and just some big-time throws. And the biggest problem with the Broncos offense Sunday's game was early on they found themselves behind the chains quite a bit, in long field situations. Heck, there was a 1st and 20 that the Broncos offense had, and then Bo Nix fired a 26-yard strike to Troy Franklin. So we're seeing things in the Broncos offense. And somebody told me, a Broncos fan tweeted me and said, usually in a 1st and 20 situation, he's like, that would have been the perfect time for me to all right, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then by the time I come back out, the defense is going to be on the field, so on and so forth. Sustained drives. That's been the key. Sean, you mentioned the first half of that game. It was a little bit of a letdown. Like, it was very sloppy by the Broncos. And for me, I was just like, no, week 12 was just like, all right, it's the week 12 curse, because every team that had a winning record ended up playing really bad against a team in a losing record. We saw that with the Cleveland Browns beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. You saw it with the Tennessee Titans beating the Houston Texans. And you saw it with the Cowboys beating the Washington Commanders. So I was like, oh, no, this is just summing up the week 12 afternoon here for the Broncos. But then they come out in the second half. Defense does a good job. They get the ball back. Brandon Jones interception. Bo Nix fires a touchdown to Cortland. And all of a sudden, hey, they're rolling. There's just a different feel with this team, I think, offensively from what we've seen in the past. I think usually we've seen okay, hey, if Denver falls down by 2 scores, whether that's 10 points or whether it's 14, okay, it's pretty much over because they can't put up points. I don't get that feeling anymore with this offense, the way that they're rolling. And look, the run game isn't even there yet. That, to me, I think is a little scary. So good performance there by the Broncos in the second half offensively. It wasn't pretty, but you know what? It was gritty.
And those are the kind of wins you're going to have to make. Look, I think when you're talking about a playoff type run, and however long it goes, I don't think the Broncos, if they make the playoffs, would be favored in any of their playoff games. But yes, you have to find a way to win even when you're not playing best. And that's especially against a bad team. And the Raiders are a bad team. The mark of a good team is
to find ways to win.
Right. The Broncos have a good performance this season against teams that are sub 500. It hasn't been very good against teams that are above 500. But then again, none of that's all that weird, given the fact that this is still a bit of a rebuild and you have a rookie quarterback. So not a shock. In fact, I think it's kind of heartening that they're beating sub 500 teams, and the above 500 teams, basically 1 to 53, probably have a better roster than the Broncos do. And some of that is something they'll have to overcome over time when they get a little more money under the cap and a little more flexibility.
Which will happen this year.
Right. Well, in Nix's case, you're talking about a guy that really keeps an even keel. I was watching it in a spot where there was tons and tons of people, and I was kind of listening to some of the comments of people watching around and ignoring the guy that pointed out that the Raiders' fake punt pass was probably the best thrown pass anybody on the Raiders has thrown all year. But in Bo Nix's case, the idea that he just doesn't seem to panic. He's calm. Yeah. He doesn't really look at the situation as a situation where he gets flustered and keeps that even keel. And I think there's a value to that beyond just Nick's, but the fact that when your quarterback stays calm in the huddle, the rest of the guys stay calm. If you're not rushed, if you're looking at it and you're not overconfident, you're not saying, geez, no matter what, we've got this. We're down 21 points. We're fine. But I think when you look at it and you're down and have 4 points at halftime, it's pretty easy to come out and say, guys, we're fine. Let's just focus up and we're going to be able to handle it. Nick's has that demeanor that I think you really like from a quarterback, along with the accuracy that we're seeing improve. Now the game's slowed down. Footwork is better, which means the accuracy is better. He's thrown a lot of really good balls. The touchdown pass to Cortland Sutton in the back corner of the end zone, the kind of moon ball, the straight up, straight down ball, is as good a pass as he's thrown all year long. And it feels like every week when you and I sit down, we're saying the pass he threw this week might have been his best pass of the year. And so we're saying that week in and week out. Again, the progression is really rapid.
Yeah, and I would even say, too, like that was a nice throw to Cortland, but I would say even like his best throw of the game was the one to Troy Franklin early on, that 26-yarder on 1st and 20. I mean, it was really the same design that they ran with Devon Vele against the Falcons.
Right.
And so you get the same look where you have a safety over the top who, they're trying to protect, keep everything in front. You got two linebackers playing underneath, and then you got the other safety. He just rips the shot there. It's like, man, it's another NFL throw. It's fun to see because, look, in passing situations, you always have to worry about Max Crosby. And so much of the Broncos, I think, protection emphasis was how do you limit Crosby from coming through and making like the disruptive plays. Like there were times where, they would cheat over like three linemen. They'd be tilted to the right side in a sense. It's like, okay, you got three on two essentially, but then Max Crosby's by himself wide. And it's like, wait, why is that? Well, it's because the guys on the right side, they're going to stunt that D tackle shifting over. They're going to try to free up where he's going to crash across. Crosby's going to come back inside and have a free lane. Denver's communication was good. I think the tight end pass protection in terms of extra chips, Javonte was good in terms of pass protection here. Once again, chipping out of the backfield. It was a concerted effort. And look, there were times Denver's running 3 route concepts against 7 defenders dropping back into coverage, and Bo is hitting the right throw every time here. Not only are we seeing Bo demonstrate more confidence, but I think even at times, like there was a thing, the benefit of watching it sometimes, you don't get to see this when you're at the stadium, but when you watch the TV broadcast, it'll zoom in sometimes on the huddle. And there's times where Bo's got like this competitive fire in the huddle. Like you can see it in his eyes and he's communicating it, and then they're going quick. And then obviously, I like the chippiness. I like a little bit of spicy Bo Nix here. Obviously,
you saw the
Tyree Wilson,
big eyes,
trying to chat with him, and then basically the camera zooms on him, and all the professional lip readers out there are saying that Bo was saying, "I don't fear anything." Which, come on, NFL Films released that mic'd up. Like, there's got to be something you can get that's going to give us a little bit of insight in that. That was fun to see, but Bo's clear cut the guy here for the Broncos, and I think that now you're going to be in a position. Look, you're 7-5. You got a matchup coming up on Monday Night Football against the Cleveland Browns. You get your bye week. You got the Colts there, and then you're going to play the Chargers on Thursday night, the Bengals on the road, and then the Kansas City Chiefs. You're in firm position right now. The playoffs. Now, you mentioned some of the teams right now behind them. You look at the Miami Dolphins. They're the 8th seed right now. They're creeping up a little bit there. You still have the Colts. You still have the Bengals. Bengals kind of on life support here. Bengals play the Steelers. That's the tough defense there. Can the Steelers match the firepower of the Bengals offense? Well, if Joe Burrow's having his way and having a day, I don't know if the Steelers offense can keep up with that. But the biggest neutralizer is that defense there. Miami Dolphins, they have to travel to a cold tundra this week to play the Green Bay Packers. That historically has never really bode well for the Miami Dolphins. So Denver's in a position right now that you're just hoping, hey, take care of business. Hope the Colts lose a game. Hope the Dolphins continue to lose. And then, like, if Denver continues to win, they're even in a position now. They're one game behind of the Los Angeles Chargers, who lost on Monday Night Football. And there's a chance, you're just looking at the schedule, there's a chance LA could go on a little bit of a losing stretch. Yes, they play the Atlanta Falcons defense coming up here. But, what kind of offense is that Falcons offense going to look? Because they're coming off the bye. And now it's like, hey, can the Chargers start to go on a slide? Can you go on a little bit of run? Denver has a chance to jump up to the 6th or the 5th seed at this point and still gain some separation to where they're not like, hey, we're looking behind us here because these 3 teams are trying to creep up. I like the position that Denver's in right now.
I think especially after the loss last night for the Chargers, also J.K. Dobbins hurt. You never root for an injury, but obviously it's an impactful one if he misses any time for the Chargers. We're talking about a guy that has it's in the top 10 in touchdowns, just outside the top 10 in rushing yards this year.
Explosive.
So, I mean, obviously that's a big loss for them, but yeah, I think they find themselves in a enviable spot because you want to be at any point in time in the NFL, especially in a league where everything's so wacky. I mean, if we watch the last 30 minutes of the early games on Sunday, I mean,
it was great.
Your head was spinning, right?
I mean,
that's absolutely bonkers. But because of that, if you ever find yourself in a position where you are in control of your own destiny, that's a tremendous opportunity because it's hard to get in that spot because so many things are happening. And your point there with the Dolphins, they're dangerous. When Tua's healthy, they're dangerous. And so they look it, but they're behind the 8 ball. The Bengals, same thing. When they're right, they're dangerous, but they're behind the 8 ball. They have to win games to make up for the games they didn't win earlier. And now the Broncos, who were able to do that, find themselves in a spot where they have a little wiggle room, but they have to be careful and make sure they don't really necessarily look at it and think, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
You have to build, you have to stay hungry. But I want to look at the bye week you brought up. Normally you get the bye week when the Broncos do, and it will be after next Monday night's game against the Browns. Normally you think that late bye week is tough. It happens to just fall in a perfect spot for the Broncos where they could use the rest, but how's it regards to Knicks? Now you have a guy who has gone through this whole season and week to week and continued to get better without the break. Now you're going to get a bye week, get a little rest, but also get a little more time to look at the film, to look at to get a little study time at what you're doing right, at what you haven't been doing right, and improve. A lot of rookie quarterbacks make a bit of a leap in that bye week. For Knicks, maybe he does too, although I wonder if the improvement he makes week to week is so good that maybe it'll just be more
it's so
about
far
rest
along in the season too, which is, you don't have time to like hit pause in a sense. And I think another thing too that Sean Payton said, he always tells us this. He says, like obviously we have an opponent we play. He said our biggest opponent is ourselves. Like that's the emphasis. That's the theme within this team is like, hey, every week it's us against us. And they feel like they can go out there. They can be any team that they play as long as they avoid some of those personal distractions that they've had. And certainly that's the case. Like you have to overcome some things like Denver. I was really concerned early on in that first half there. I was like, man, I don't know if they're going to overcome the not having Zach Allen play because they were getting gashed in the run game a little bit. Running backs were having success. And it's like, man, they're really missing Zach Allen. How are they going to overcome it? And sure enough, they find a way to buckle down, take a deep breath here for a second. And then they go out there in the second half and play a fantastic defensive performance where now they're getting more pressure on Gardner Minshew. They're getting pressure on, Desmond Ridder, who fills in for him. You're getting you have 5 sacks, I think, in totality in that second half. So it's like what Denver was able to do is they were able to buckle down when it mattered. And I think that's just what was it? Sean said it after the game. He said something along the lines of, I don't know if we win this game last year with last year's team. And that's not like, and some people are like, oh, he's taking a shot at Russell Wilson. No, he's saying that with where the team was at last year, just overall, he didn't know if they could have won that game, considering some of the adversity that they faced. I think you can look at the story, Bo Nix, different level of composure than we've seen. And, he's a guy that just keeps slinging it. And, if he, like I said, we're not seeing him make a lot of mistakes. And I just think right now, like they're getting a lot of good contributions. And once again, Devon Vele has, I think, really solidified himself as the wide receiver 2 here inside the offense. Cortland obviously coming up big once again. Denver's in a good spot here. Not only, I think, for the rest of the season, as long as they continue to stay healthy, knock on wood, they're in a good spot right now. They can make some hay here. But look, I'm always a big believer. Unfortunately, in our industry, we always have to sometimes look ahead. I'm very much a big believer, and I know the players in that locker room haven't talked to guys. They're taking it one game at a time.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the receivers. Obviously, we don't know what the situation will be with Josh Reynolds when we know that the practice window opened up. So the next 21 days, we have to figure out what they will do. I suppose it's possible they could shut him down for the year, but unless that's necessary, you'd like to have more weapons. But a little bit about Vele and Sutton. Obviously, the report there is really good. Sutton, 8 catches, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Clearly, they're on the same page. That's credit to Sutton, who managed to get on the same page with Russell Wilson when Russell Wilson and he had 10 touchdown connections last year, which put him 6th in the league. But Vele's improvement has been very, very rapid, and now you're starting to see what I really like seeing about Sutton and Vele. And keep in mind, before he got hurt, Josh Reynolds actually had the highest per catch average in yards on the team, still actually does, but the sample size is smaller. We're starting to see the connection with Troy Franklin. Of course, we played with it at Oregon. Marvin Mims had 44 yards this game as well. Starting to look at it and say, wait a minute, it's great that the receivers are getting the rapport with the quarterback, but how much is this your quarterback just knows how to hit the open guy? So as long as somebody is getting open, he's going to find him and he's going to hit him. That's a great sign. I am not making the comparison because he is not that kind of quarterback, and we'd have to check back with 12 years from now. But Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, those kind of players, Drew Brees, those kind of players make their hay because you look at the guys that caught for them, and a bunch of them were guys that never did anything before and never did anything after.
Yeah.
And that's because the quarterback found a way to get to turn them into the best versions of themselves. The early signs are that Bo Nix might be that kind of guy.
Yeah, no, and look, I think, when you have a belief and you have buy-in from the locker room where it's like these receivers know, like, hey, I know that my quarterback's going to be able to find me. There's just a different level of confidence that's, exuded from them. And I think that's one thing too, is with Bo is not afraid of distributing to multiple people. I mean, there's been a handful of games where he's contributed. He's thrown passes to 9, 10 different receivers and throughout the course of a game. Like that right there is, a guy, like sometimes you see quarterbacks lock onto one guy and say, hey, like, I'm going to keep going to this guy. Like Cortland obviously leads in catches and targets, but other guys are getting involved just as much too, which is, it's a nice thing to see. So I think if from a defensive coordinator standpoint, obviously I think I would probably try to game plan like, all right, hey, Cortland Sutton's going to be their top receiver, but this guy, number 17, Devon Vele, he's going to be a problem. And now they got Troy Franklin. Like Troy Franklin, it's not showing up in the stats, but if you watch the film, how defenses are playing the Broncos offense because of Troy Franklin, because of his speed, they're scared of it. They are absolutely scared.
Well, he's got a size speed combo that
which
is Marvin
scary.
Mims is maybe a little faster.
Yes,
but Troy Franklin is
he's got the
notably
height, and he's got the wind, the range to be able to do it. And I think that is the way defenses are playing. They're like, hey, we got to protect deep, and that's allowing the short to intermediate stuff to hit. And look, the Broncos have a quarterback that is hitting those intermediate stuff that has not been present for the last 2 years.
Right. That's a big part of it. We'll talk about why the Broncos are generating much more consistent offense, even if it's more field goals than they'd like. But we'll remind you that if you're looking for the perfect place to work, play, socialize, and Thanksgiving is coming up this week, exercise might be on the docket. So look no further than the Denver Athletic Club right in the heart of downtown Denver. As a DAC member, you'll enjoy top-notch amenities like a full fitness center, licensed child care center, spa, massage, Pilates, a golf simulator, even more. But what truly sets it aside is that community, that vibrant community that's driven by a member-owned club. That means it's all about you, offering year-round social events, co-working, dining, fun for the entire family. The Denver Athletic Club is truly a club for your whole life. So look at joining the DAC today. Visit denverathleticClub.cc for all the details. Well, the wide receivers, performances, especially Vele and Sutton, that is coming along nicely. And you broke down a little bit of what Nix has been doing. But let's keep in mind now the Broncos, even kind of an underwhelming game. I don't think you're dazzled by the win.
Let's say it was sloppy.
Yeah, it's sloppy.
First half.
It wasn't the best, and the second half was certainly better. But the team is now generating more consistent offense. The Broncos scored on 7 different drives on Sunday. Now, 5 of them were field goals. The next step is to convert those field goals, at least some of them, into touchdowns. But last year, we were talking about the Broncos not even being able to necessarily get a bunch of field goals. So, I mean, when you're generating points on 7 drives, that's a really good sign. So some of what we talked about there with Nix, the receiving, the passing game has opened it up. Bo Nix, at this point in the season, you might be a little surprised to know it. You might be a little nervous to know it because we talked about this in the first handful of games. Bo Nix is 3rd in the league in dropbacks. Mm-hmm. The only quarterbacks that have more dropbacks are C.J. Stroud of the Texans and Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. That's it. And then Bo Nix, not Mahomes, not Burrow, and not Josh Allen, not any of those guys. It's Nix. That to me is not necessarily bad, but it is indicative of the fact that we have a running game on this team that doesn't seem to be. I'm not going to say it's problematic, but it is unsettled. Javonte Williams wasn't able to get anything going with Javonte this year. We've seen games where you're like, wow, he looks like the old Javonte. And other games where you look at it and go, ooh, wow, this isn't working at all. We know that he's a free agent after the season. We know that any running backs, look at Saquon Barkley and Ezekiel Elliott in their primes had a tough time getting second contracts. It's going to be tough for Javonte Williams. Audric Estime a little more effective, but doesn't get many carries. Jaleel McLaughlin was the best back on Sunday. Going with the hot hand approach can be problematic because it keeps coaches from trying to do what they want to do, right? Because you may have a matchup that you think I would like a power run right up the middle, but if the hot hand is McLaughlin, you look at it and say, okay, now what do I do? Yeah. So the hot hand approach always sounds good, but in reality, it makes it tougher on coaches to try to dictate what they want. What does this running game need to do to have a clear pecking order and to have its performance be a little more consistent? Because I think it hurt them in this game. It didn't end up costing them the game, but their inability to generate drives in the early going of the game is what allowed the Raiders to build a lead that they took into the half.
Yeah, and it also depends a lot on, the front that faces you. Like the Raiders, they wanted to go with a heavy front. They sent a lot of blitz looks, which it's hard to run against the blitz. It's hard to run against some of those pinch fronts, which is why we saw some of the aggressive things. Like, for example, Denver's inside their own 10-yard line, 3rd and 1. They go heavy run formation, and then you do the quick little play action. You catch them on the drag because the defense is selling out they think it's going to be a run there, and I just think it's just finding balance. I don't think the run game here for the Broncos, I don't think it's going to establish a true pecking order this season. I think, unfortunately, they're in a spot right now where that's going to be what they do. They're going to rotate between Javonte, Jalil, and Audric. And obviously, hopefully those guys continue to stay healthy. I think going forward, we talked to Sean yesterday. One thing Sean told us was he's got to find a way to get Audric more touches. But the thing is, it's hard. Like, you get throughout the course of the game. I did feel like certain areas like Javonte, even though he had a hard time running the ball on Sunday, pass protection wise, I thought he was very solid. That's been a strength of his all season long. Jalil obviously got off to that early hot start, but then he had the knee injury. I think that really impacted it as well. So it's like you're having these little things pop up during the game that are impacting what you're able to do. Certainly you get a little pass happy sometimes. And look, I think Sean's trying to iron some things out. I think one of the things he wants is like, hey, he's going to be ultra aggressive. If he feels like there's an opportunity for them to, kind of like just take the dagger to a team,
which we saw late in the game when there were a lot of questions of clock management.
But I would say
and I don't think that worked.
No,
that clearly didn't work. You don't want to have the lead and have a 15-second drive.
So he said what he on that one is they wanted to try to convert like through the air. They wanted to try to get a first down there just because, okay, at that point, then it would soften up afterwards. Cause like if the Broncos, they're getting a first down on that, or like, it's 1st and 10, okay, incomplete. 2nd and 10, incomplete. 3rd and 10, like let's say you were able to get a first down on that drive in any way, shape, or form. Now it softens the Raiders defense up to where they actually have to respect the pass a little bit more. And then that's where you can run. It's just trying to find your balance there. But the Raiders came out and said, hey, we have 3 timeouts left. We know we got the 2-minute warning. We're going to play our heavy front against you, and we're going to dare you to, try to beat us. And I think that's what Sean tried to do. It backfired a little bit. Luckily, Denver's defense, they found their groove in the second half.
Yeah, the question about running game as well is kind of interesting. Bo Nix in the last 5 games has only had more than 5 yards rushing once against the Ravens.
Yeah.
The designed runs have more or less gone by the wayside, as Nix has not had fewer than 30 pass attempts in any of those last 5 games. So the conversion to an extent of the Drew Brees-like pocket passer that consistently Sean Payton has more or less said that he tried to turn Russell Wilson into as best as possible. Bo Nix, we've seen this before. He ran a lot more at Auburn than he did at Oregon. At Oregon, the offense suited him to basically drop back at the ball out quick. There was some running, but that was
his first year. He had 14 rushing touchdowns at Oregon, which is nuts.
And then, but it continued to go down from there as they saw more visibility to pass. They started moving the run. Is that primarily because you're just trying to avoid injury more than anything else? Or is it the fact that you really believe that Bo Nix's ability to go through the air dramatically is more advantageous than his ability to get yards on the ground, but even when you don't have a consistent running game?
I mean, I think you want to be smart with how you use Bo with his legs. I've had fans ask me this week, how come we're not seeing more design runs with Bo in the last handful of weeks? I'm like, you don't really have to. At the
NFL level, I'm rather type. I don't like quarterbacks taking hits in the open field. I don't even like it when it's guys like Jalen Hurts who are big and absorb it, or Lamar Jackson who never really takes a straight shot.
You don't want to rely.
I just don't like it.
You don't want to rely. On
I like
you want
to
have it in your
right.
You want to have it in your arsenal.
We know that Mahomes can run. That's where I think we see the same thing, right? Early part of his career, Mahomes was running more designed runs, more ability to get things done with his legs. And we saw certainly he still has it. Go ask the Panthers that I worked on that last drive.
Yeah.
But you want to be judicious because he helps you more throwing the ball than he does running the ball. You have other guys you pay to run the ball. So you want to minimize the risk of him taking a shot. And it feels like that's actually what happens when you respect the quarterback part a little more than the runner, as long as he's got that part of his game. So it doesn't bother me, but it's notable only because the Broncos running game's been so inconsistent.
Yeah. And they're going to try to just continue to piece things away and try to figure out how they're going to get it going. Certainly the jet sweep, I would like to see that kind of thrown out of the playbook a little bit, or at least like don't bring it back for a while, just because like teams expect it now, especially with Marvin playing the role he's in. I want to take two. I go back to the nerds and the dweebs at PFF that sit there with their little glasses and talk about analytics in their little nerdy voice. Like you saw something like somebody put a tweet out a while ago. Danny, I don't know if you saw my tweet last night, but they're like, oh yeah, Sean Payton basically just got like a lesser talented version of Taysom Hill. And it's like, I want to, these are the people that I would throw into a locker in high school. Like I can't stand them. It just drives me nuts. They sit there in the hallway, play with their Yu-Gi-Oh cards and talk about analytics.
Now, the funny thing is
freaking nuts.
But you love the analytic nerds from NFL Next Gen Stats though.
Like
you can admit it. You
no,
don't dislike nerds. You just have preferred nerds.
No, I don't like. No, I'm not much of a nerd guy.
Yeah, you are.
Sense. I would say the NFL actually has. I would say like people like live and die by analytics. I'm a big believer. There are some things that analytics can do that can inform you on how to make some better decisions. But if like the thing that kills me about the analytics discussion is that people are dying on like, oh yeah, the analytics say this DVOA, ADOT. Like, just stop. I hate that. Like, watch the film. Like every game, that's the thing. Like every play is a different story, tells a different story because it's impacted by different elements that really like analytics for the most part can't predict when we talk about behavior, right? I'm talking about behavior and inside
analytics are great for large data size. Right? Large data size. When you're talking about over the course of a season or something like that,
I think
this is more likely to be successful.
Instead of like one player, though. Like,
it's a game played by players.
It's hard to, like, the thing about analytics that drives me the most crazy is that it's like, oh, these analytics say this about one player, but it's like this one player is influenced not only by the 10 other players on his team, but by the 11 players on the other side of the ball.
In real time.
And
human
no way
nature,
to
psychology, all these things come into it. Analytics when it's used correctly. And the problem is when it burst onto the scene, not everyone's really great at math, which I get.
I'm not great at math. I hated that.
But at the same time, it has to do with it's the same thing I've said for many, many years. If you're going to hire someone, there's something wrong in your house, you're going to hire a handyman, and the handyman shows up with just a hammer. You might not have a good handyman, right?
No.
You don't have molded. And the problem is you have, for a while, we had this battle of people at scouts. Like, the only thing that matters is what I see with my eyes. Well, that's just bringing a hammer. And the people that look at analytics and say, the only thing that matters is what the math says. That's just bringing a hammer. They are different tools for different objectives and different jobs. And the people who use all of them correctly are the people that tend to be the most successful. Exactly. You understand where it has value and where it does not. Ideally, you use all of them together.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's the thing is like it's blending, and it's not just.
But when you run an analytics company, what are you going to sell, right? I mean, that's that's the way it goes, right?
But I'm always a big believer in it's like, what is the film telling me? You know, like as a former player, as a former coach, I know what I'm looking at. I can read things based on what I'm seeing, but what is it telling me in the grand scheme of things? Okay, it's telling me something on this play, but okay, same concept. Like, let's use the dagger concept for the Broncos offense. Let's go back to week 1 where Bo misses Cortland on that in-breaking thing. Dagger has now become a big part of their offense, specifically on third down. Teams are still having a hard time struggling with stopping it. Like, they'll have trips to one side or they'll have the trips to the right side, and then they'll still run the same concepts, but teams are like, wait, we're not recognizing it. So it's like, what is it that you're doing that's changing the variance of how it's looking and how a defense is reading it and how they're keying onto it versus like, okay, if they're going to play Cortland on the dagger, who's playing Troy Franklin on the vert, right? Who's like, teams aren't worried about the tight end running a little bit of that snag concept. They're not doing that. They're not worried about that. So it's like the football aspect of it is like, you get the behavior side, you understand how to influence how other players perform, like behavior. That's what we all like live in a thing where it's like psychology, right? Everything's behavior oriented. How am I reacting to what these people are doing? That is where I think Sean Payton has a little bit of an advantage because he sees things and I think he knows when to attack it. And he knows how to get someone to either hesitate or to think. And once again, I think the Raiders, despite how bad they are, they have some talented players on that defensive side of the ball. Trevon Moehrig, number 7, he's playing safety at times. He's playing up as a walk-up flat defender, a force player, and they're still getting him to overthink it. And he's a problem for other teams. I think Denver and Sean are very good at understanding, hey, here's where we can attack this weakness. I know how to do it. Let's try to build up and get him in that situation. And then I think he knows when to strike.
Yeah, I mean, football at its heart is still a game essentially of deception. one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
It's about trying to deceive the other person so that in that split second when they're trying to decipher what they're seeing, then if you execute
if you
correctly,
can get people to think, it's
right,
bad.
Yeah, if you can get execution, then obviously is tough to beat. So obviously that's a big part of it, and it's we'll talk about that defense for the Broncos in just a moment. But you talk about psychology and how important it is in the world of sports. It's important top to bottom for all of us, and that's why over at Miley Sports, we have a Wellness Wednesday, and mental health is health, and the psychology is a big part of that. So you can spend a little time chatting with our friend Rick Perea, Dr. Rick Perea from think14u.org. That's think1 4u.org. Dr. Rick takes a look at a lot of the ways that you can take advantage of psychology and a bunch of the newer technologies that are available and help you get your checkup from the neck up, because anybody can benefit from that. NFL players, and Dr. Perea's had many NFL players that have benefited directly from some of his approaches, but you can benefit with that as well. Even if you're just sitting at your job in an office and maybe watching this on YouTube, I promise we won't say anything. But if you're doing that, and you can still be better at your role too. You can have the energy, focus, all the things that you want to do. A reframe can help a lot of people. So give Dr. Rick Perea a look. We have his program right here, of course, on Mile High Sports as well on Wellness Wednesdays. But check out the website, think1 4u.org. That's think1, the number 4u.org for more. Get your checkup from the neck up with Dr. Rick Perea and friends at Think1 4U, because that mentality is a large part of it. And for the Broncos defense, let's get into it right off the bat, because yes, without Zach Allen in the early going, hurt his heel in practice late in the week, wasn't able to go. First game he's missed as a Bronco.
Yeah.
And obviously Zach Allen behind probably only Pat Surtain, and maybe not even by that much, as the most impactful Denver Bronco on defense, I think, all season long. He's been outstanding. They missed him in the early going.
Yeah.
It was obvious.
Yeah, no, and look, I think they started settling a little bit more in the second half. But obviously, like Zach Allen, he's one of the top pressure creators from the defensive interior in the NFL this season. He's very disruptive. Like a lot of what he does that I think is so impactful that shows up on tape. Not only is he beating one-on-ones, not only is he cutting through and fighting through double teams, but there's times where he's drawing more attention to where it is allowing other guys on that defensive front to get more one-on-one opportunities. And certainly, like, the Broncos struggle with that a little bit early on. Like the Raiders, I mean, there were times where, okay, Gardner Minshew, they'd be in the shotgun. They'd have gun to the left, like tailbacks to the left there. And they would, instead of just swinging them out, they'd bring them back up underneath. And then it's like, oh, well, we're trying to find a way to vary our pressure looks because we have to get pressure on Gardner Minshew. So it's like, all right, we're going to blitz an inside linebacker. We're going to blitz a safety. So that means we have to replace in coverage, which means that, hey, okay, Jonah Ellis, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to get, or whoever's that outside linebacker, Dondre Tillman, Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, doesn't matter. There's going to be times where those guys are going to have to account for a tailback. And when you catch them in man coverage situations, you're going to have to find a way to maximize those opportunities. And that's just something that Jonah Ellis will continue to work and grow with. But like Vance Joseph is very calculated in trying to get pressure. Like that's one thing you have to do. I think if Denver would have stayed in a position, and luckily they didn't abandon it, right? They tried to get aggressive in the first half, and they were getting caught a few times. But it's like if you abandon it out of fear of like, wow, it's not working, okay, we just got to play back, then you're going to get cut up even more. I just think that there's a belief with this defense and guys like Jordan Jackson, Malcolm Roach, John Franklin Myers, and obviously the pass rushers there, Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. Brandon Jones playing really terrific football. Cody Barton playing really good football. They just buckled down and said, hey, let's play our brand. Let's not let them dictate what they've been doing so far in the first half. And they buckled down. They got stops in the run game, and obviously they got stops in the passing game. I felt like Jaquan McMillan got called for a terrible pass interference call. I didn't like that. But aside from that, like I felt like they overcame the first half, and then they played a much better second half. Clean operation.
Jonah Ellis does get a sack. Iyomo Uvazu-Rike gets a half sack as well, filling in, gets a little bit of pressure. They got 5 sacks on the day, including the strip sack by Nick Bonito. Bonito gets to 10 sacks on the year, first Bronco to do that since 2018 when both Von Miller and Bradley Chubb did
26 and a half combined between those two that year.
But how about this? Ever since then, so starting in 2019, there has not yet been a Bronco to lead the team in sacks twice. Von Miller in 2019, Malik Reed in 2020, then Shelby Harris, Draymond Jones, Jonathan Cooper last year, and now Nick Bonito. And of course, maybe Cooper can catch him. He's on the team. But it feels like the Broncos have had difficulty because you go look, and of course, everyone can have a Von Miller, a future Hall of Famer. But year in and year out, you knew what Von Miller was going to get. You look around the league, like, well, we know what Nick Bosa is going to get or TJ Watt's going to get. We know that kind of thing. Now, I don't know if they have that in Bonito just yet.
I think
but you definitely have a guy that around the league, people are realizing the burst and the bend are real. And you saw that when he was at Oklahoma, and it took a while to get it moving a little bit at NFL speed, but now it's there. And Benito has become a real game wrecker. I think he's not in the Bosa or Watt class.
No,
but he is in one of those things
he's in his own category.
Where defensive coordinators break down the Broncos and they say, okay, well, we know about number 2. We got to make sure we stay away from number 2. Okay. And then one of the very next things they're looking at 99. Yeah. And now they're very aware we have to make sure we're watching for number 15 and to a lesser extent Cooper, but Benito's explosiveness is different level.
Yeah, no, and Benito is now, I think, become that guy for the Broncos that, like, you know, you always used to know it. You were going to get it with Vaughn in a sense where it's like, hey, it's late in the game and the opposing offense has the ball.
He's coming.
You need to come up with a big play. Benito is that guy. Like the Broncos been looking for a type of closer in a sense at edge rusher. And I think Benito is emerging into that guy. This is the first time in Benito's career, whether that be Pop Warner, high school, college, where he's had double-digit sacks.
Yeah.
You know, against the Falcons, I was talking to him briefly in the locker room, and I said, you one away. He's like, never happened before. He's like, I've never had this happen in my career. So he's in demon time right now. I think, you know, I said his new nickname's Homelander. He's a big fan of the show The Boys, the Danny Bailey. You watch that yet, D? Yeah, so Danny's been watching that. But it's like, man, he's on demon time. And I think you just have a collective group of guys on that defensive line and even an outside linebacker where it's like, all right, hey, Nick's producing, Coop's producing. You've got JFM, you got Zach Allen, you've got DJ, you've got Malcolm, you got Jordan Jackson, and now you got your other guys in Jonah stepping up to the point now. It's like there's also some other stuff we got to get to as well. It's like Denver has some decisions this week. Like the decision on Drew Sanders has to happen here on Wednesday as to whether or not he's going to go back on PUP for the rest of the year, even though he's made great progress, or if he's going to be promoted to the active roster. Obviously, Denver waiving tight end Greg Dulcich yesterday. That opens up a roster move here. In my opinion, I think Drew Sanders stays on the PUP list.
I think he's going to as well.
I think they bring back Josh Reynolds with that active roster spot.
Agreed.
At this point.
I think that's exactly what they're going to do.
Denver's just in
and
a
that's a shame for
round.
Sanders because there's a lot of ability, but
it's like
you don't get better unless you play.
He just tore his Achilles in April. So it's like, I think the progress he's made is terrific, but get yourself some more time.
And you're talking about a guy whose game is predicated on speed
and power.
Sideline to sideline speed.
And he's looked good in practice. Like watching him, like he's strong. Like he's strong as hell. And he's going to obviously be a big part of what they want to do next year. It's just like, do you need him right now? I don't think the team is in a position where they need him right now, probably more so than they need a guy like Josh Reynolds.
Right.
And his decision's coming next Wednesday. So, I mean, technically, they could sit on the Greg Dulcich waiver thing here and say, you know what, we're not going to make a move. Like Sanders will go to PUP. We don't need to bring Josh back yet. We have until next Wednesday to do it after, you know, after the Browns game and then the bye week. I'm very curious to see how Denver maneuvers because it's also a tough position. It's a good problem to have, but it's tough for them to be in because the roster gymnastics right now. You release a vested veteran, you know, at before the trade deadline, you could just sign them the next day to your practice squad. They don't have to go through waivers. Every player that gets cut or waived right now, they have to go through the waivers. So Dulcich is going to go through waivers. Don't be surprised he gets picked up by the Colts, the Chargers, or the Browns at this point. I don't know if the Bengals will do it, but maybe, you know, because they obviously will end up playing Denver. But just keep an eye on some of those things this week here as Thanksgiving week is approaching.
Yeah, Benito now, by the way, with the 10 sacks, tied with Myles Garrett and only half sack behind Daniil Hunter and Trey Hendrickson, pardon me, of the Bengals, who leads the entire league at 11 and a half sacks. So pretty impressive numbers there when you're talking about it. It's obviously a good defensive unit for the Broncos, despite the fact it's not highly decorated. The interception by Brandon Jones, I think, kind of turned the game for the Broncos. Yeah. That was a big one. And
Brandon Jones fluke game.
Jones kind of Johnny on the spot. Obviously, Minshew was hit while he was throwing, and that caused the ball to sail a little bit. But you're perfect. Yeah, hey, sometimes right time, right spot. That's how it works, right? We will take a look a little bit at the Cleveland Browns in a minute. The Broncos' last opponent before the bye and their first Monday Night Football game of the season. But I want to remind you that as we age, each of us finds things about ourselves that we'd like to improve. I mean, all of us do. Maybe in your case, it's looking to lose weight, or you would like to get better sleep, or you're looking for more energy or focus during the day. It's different for everyone. That's where our friends at Skin City Wellness can help, because their focus is on empowering patients on their own healthcare journey, optimizing their health the way they want to. Everyone's different. Everyone's body's different. Everyone's needs are different. And with Skin City Wellness, you'll start with patient-specific analysis with your own blood work. Trained medical professionals then work on a one-on-one basis with you, get you transparency regarding your health, maybe potential health concerns, and then how to reach your goals. With Skin City Wellness, you're building the foundation for optimized health and longevity with cutting-edge medical therapies that help your body perform as it should, offering hormone replacement, but semaglutide and GLP-1 therapies, peptides, NAD+, and more. Each of these therapies can work in concert. They can work separately. They all help patients in what they're looking to accomplish, whether that's burning fat or assisting with weight loss, optimizing sleep or sleep cycles, enhancing cognitive or executive functions, or building and retaining muscle masses, as well as many other personal benefits. But the point is they'll be working with you to create a solution for you so you can achieve the health goals that you want. Check them out online today at skincitywellness.com. Mention Mile High Sports and get $50 off your initial blood work and consultation. So take control of your health with Skin City Wellness. Cody Rourke's with us today, breaking down the Broncos, of course. And now we'll go back to Saturday real quick, because before we were in here, a little bit of talk around the studio about the failure of the Colorado Buffaloes to come with a good start against a Kansas team that is better than anyone.
The tailback is good.
But we're going to leave that to our pals at the SCO show. But
I will say this, as someone who's not a CU fan, look, I can't stand CU. I'm an Oregon Ducks fan, right?
Danny, why is he sitting here?
Rooted
why
in
do we have this guy here? What's
rooted
going
in
on?
substance. Danny Bailey.
Wait, you're an Oregon?
But
you're an Oregon Ducks fan?
I've always been an Oregon Ducks fan.
Does Nate Lundy know this?
Oh,
why
yeah.
is he here?
Nate and I have like friendly banter. You know, I know he's the Corvallis guy there. Corvallis is very nice, by the way. But, SCO Ducks, #1 team in the country, by the way, undefeated. Anyways, I did feel like, man, CU got a terrible whistle, I think, against Kansas. I felt like Kansas, they were playing very dirty in that game.
But Kansas, they were playing dirty. They were playing dirty, but Kansas was also the aggressor.
Yeah, no, they were.
But Kansas came out
but the fact that Shedeur took a shot to the knees like that after the play, that should have been an ejection. And the fact that you had players pushing his head down into the ground, like after the fact, after a play was done, Shedeur obviously can't touch the official. I understand that,
right.
But it's like, I don't fault him for being mad about that one bit.
But Deion Sanders was right at the end of the game and basically said we fell in love with our own reflection a little bit.
Yeah, it happened.
And
could be a good wake-up call for him.
It's a wake-up call, and it's a wake-up call for the long term. It's a painful one. So how did the Broncos, who I think it's a little different in the pros, but you still have to learn the same lesson. The Cleveland Browns are next on the docket. You look at the Cleveland Browns, they're 3-8. They're a disaster. They're about to get you off the hook for having the biggest dead cap hit in history when they move on from Deshaun Watson at the end of the year. But they're a tough team. We talked about Myles Garrett just a moment ago. Yeah. There is talent on there.
They're going to be a much tougher team.
Winston has taken over. They've been more dangerous. It can be a little more scattershot, but the big play is back with Winston there. How do the Broncos make sure, one, that they learn that lesson? You can't afford to come out flat and find yourself behind the 8 ball because there is some quick strike ability with Cleveland.
Yeah.
There is the ability for them to get after the quarterback that is vastly superior than even what you saw with Max Crosby and the Raiders, because they have more talent than the Raiders do coming after the quarterback. This is a team that made the playoffs last year, was expected to be able to make the playoffs this year. The Broncos can't overlook these guys, and they can't look at themselves and say, hey, we're playing great. Bo Nix is playing great. This team's got 3 wins. We're going to get them. They need to be able to make sure that they focus up. And there are things that the Browns can do that are some of the weak spots for the Broncos.
Well, and the Browns are coming off of a little bit of a mini bye week. They played last Thursday night, so they get a little bit of extra.
Topple Pittsburgh in the snow.
Yeah, and now you get to play Monday Night Football, so it's like it's a little bit of a longer layoff, a little bit more rest time to get recouped there.
It's expected to be freezing cold in that game, but you know what city is not unaccustomed to that?
Yeah.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Not gonna bother them.
So, I mean, it's kind of like it neutralizes. It's like a net negative in a sense. It's like, okay, like, you think most of the time, like if it's the Miami Dolphins coming to play Denver on Monday Night Football,
harder on the Dolphins team or something like that.
It's a lot harder than what, obviously he's going to be there. But I mean, Jameis Winston, I think the key is obviously pressuring him. He's going to throw passes that are going to be put into harm's way. And so it's like you have to come up. This is an opportunity. You have to come up with takeaways when those opportunities present itself. The Baltimore Ravens are kicking themselves from, they had 3 or 4 dropped interceptions against Jameis Winston and the Browns in that game that really should have won them the game. Instead, they lose to Cleveland, and then they take it out on Denver the very next week.
And Sean Payton, who coached him in his last season with the Saints, knows him.
But the thing
and knows what he can do well.
The Browns have talent on the offensive side of the ball. Look, Jerry Jeudy's having a good year for Cleveland. He's been their best player the last handful of weeks, and David Njoku is a big tight end that has the capabilities of hurting you in some big ways. And obviously, Chubb is back from the massive knee injury he had last year. They got a talented offense, and they have some speedy guys that can get behind you defensively. So I think we're going to be monitoring this week the status of Riley Moss, who, You know, luckily, Sean Payton said after the game, avoided something serious, but, you know, it is MCL, which still requires some time. You know, Mike McGlinchey had an MCL injury and he missed 4 weeks. So,
and the cold doesn't help you.
No, God, no.
Cases,
the cold now. I get up every morning and I feel like, did I get hit in the knee again? Like,
right.
No, it's just cold weather is not fun. So obviously we'll find out a little bit more. The Broncos will practice on Wednesday. They'll practice Thursday morning. I'll be there. So I'll try to provide as many updates as I can over on milehighsports.com about the practice status of those guys here. You just have to account. You got to be on your P's and Q's against them. Defensively, I mean, Cleveland's got former friend Shelby Harris. It was obviously playing well for them. That, you know, they did lose Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I don't think he's eligible to return this week, if I'm not mistaken. I think it'll be next week. So Denver kind of dodging one there.
One of the 13 guys on the Browns that have logged sacks this year.
And he's very, very good. Yeah, they're getting contributions in bunches, but it's all led by, guess what? Number 95, Myles Garrett. Yeah. He is a freak of nature. He had 3 sacks against Herbert and the Chargers. He had 3 sacks last week against Russell Wilson and the Steelers. Like, this is a guy that you want to try to neutralize a little bit. And the Broncos did that last year. Ironically enough, like last year's game against Cleveland.
Best game the Garrett Bowles ever played.
It was a run emphasis game against the number 1 run defense in the NFL. Like that's where we saw Sean Payton get a little creative because we didn't see Russ design runs really until that game last year. So now it's like, all right, hey, Myles Garrett is a guy that can absolutely wreck your game plan. So you have to account for him. They got really good players in the secondary. And so it's going to be a tough matchup here for the Broncos, but luckily it's prime time. Like I think this is, one of those old classic rivalries, Browns, Broncos. These two teams don't like each other. They got history, but what better way than Monday Night Football? And also, you got to try to shut it up a little bit. Jerry Jeudy coming home. Well, not coming home, but come to the place that drafted him. And, there's some bad blood there.
Yeah.
So Pat Surtain against Jerry Jeudy should be fun to watch. I'm excited for it, but it's gonna be a challenge for Denver. It's not like for people saying, "Hey, pencil in Denver's win. Win number 8 is coming." It is going to be a battle here, one game at a time. But Cleveland's your next opponent.
And if it really is cold, if there's any weather, it can be an equalizer. That tends to favor the team that is not the best of the two because it brings the other one down a little bit. That's just the way it works. It equalizes it a little bit. So I think there are concerns about this game. It's not a gimme, and that's where I kind of look at the Buffs and Kansas. You looked at a Kansas team that was ranked 22nd at one point in the country, and the interceptions and some bad play and a couple injuries derailed them, and then they started playing like the team that they looked like. They started playing up to the caliber. They've knocked off 3 top 25 teams in a row. It's not as if Cleveland's doing that, but Cleveland did knock off the Steelers. Cleveland has played well. Now they look like a team a little bit that's at least more resemblant of the one that made the playoffs last year, even though the quarterback is different. For the Broncos, you have to make sure you don't do that. But it is Thanksgiving week.
Yes.
And those fantasy football players out there trying to figure out, because you have a Thursday game. You got a Friday game.
3 games on Thursday, I think.
So you
got
Friday
game.
So I mean, it's all
so
weekend
Sunday's
long.
Going to be kind of like, there's not as many games.
A little bit, right? And then the Broncos don't play till Monday, so maybe everyone's focus is on it's on food.
Better put your Christmas tree up, folks. It's time. It's time to be able.
Is yours up already?
No, I don't even have one yet. We're gonna go buy one. We're gonna go buy one. The Beyonce and I are gonna go buy one. I will say this though. All right, what's your favorite Thanksgiving dish? Like, if you had to choose, if you had to tell me your plate, put the best plate together. You don't have to do the one I sent you from the financial standpoint, because I put it out on social media. It's like a $20 fantasy football.
Let's look at it. Let's look at it.
All right,
let's give it a peek here. Okay, so you got to do. So your main course,
you get your meat dish.
Okay, you know what? I'm the person. I'm fine with turkey. If I get to, and it'll be turkey at my family's, but I would pick ham.
I'm a ham guy.
Me too.
I don't like the tryptophan. I'm not tripping.
Yeah, I don't want to get all sleepy.
No.
Right. But
Cowboys Giants will do that for you anyways.
Like potatoes, I take all of it except the sweet potatoes. Not a sweet potato guy.
You're not a sweet potato guy? You don't like the sweet potatoes with the marshmallows?
I'm the black sheep in the family, because I'm the only person in my family that does not like that. And I've gotten some flack for that over the course of my life. But any other way, I'm good.
Okay.
I just don't like the yams. Not my thing.
I'm a mashed potato. I love mashed potatoes.
Me too.
I think the secret ingredient, sour cream, butter,
sour cream,
chives, just creamy, just absolutely the best.
Yep.
Mac and cheese. I'm making my mac and cheese.
Super underrated.
So
I know it's more about a southern thing, but super underrated to have the mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese there. I love stuffing. Green bean casserole.
I like stuffing.
Good.
I'm a green bean casserole guy.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'm not doing a ham or turkey this year.
Okay.
All right, because fiance and I, it's just the two of us.
Right.
We're not having family here. We're not going to see family.
You don't need 3 weeks of leftovers.
We went to go look at, because we were going to do a ham. We went yesterday to go look at a ham. And I was like, 10-pound ham. Like, we're not going to eat a 10-pound ham by ourselves.
2 of you.
I was like, $54 for a 10-pound ham? No. And so I was like, all right, well, let's just go to Whole Foods and let's just get a filet mignon. Let's just get a steak. We'll do steaks.
I like that.
You get 2 filet mignons, and then all of a sudden you look over to the left after we already got it. They wrapped it up for us, and I was like, those are small hams over there, little mini hams. I would have loved a ham. Gosh darn it. $52 for 2 filet mignons. I could have got a $34 little mini ham there. No, we're excited. It's going to be fun. And obviously, I hope everyone watching has a great Thanksgiving. Stay safe. If you're going to play your football, like Thanksgiving football, don't be the guy that takes it back to the PE days, the try hard. Just have fun there. Be careful. Don't throw your back out on Thanksgiving.
That's the funny thing, too, is like the person who does that, the one that's most likely to hurt themselves.
Yeah, you're going to throw their back out, and it's just going to be like, oh.
I'll see you be walking around wondering how your hip got hurt or something stupid like that.
I'm not much of a pie guy.
I'm not huge on pie either. I do like a pecan pie. I'll have a pecan pie, but otherwise,
I don't like
a carrot cake.
I don't like pies with nuts.
I don't need vegetables in my cake. That makes no sense to me. I don't want a vegetable cake.
We gotta get Ryan Edwards in this thing too.
I have, believe me, many years of past radio life. We have done this. Yes, I'm fully aware.
I would say, for me, I'm gonna make cookies tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Geez, today feels like Wednesday.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm gonna make Thanksgiving
cookies. Okay, what cookies though?
Sugar cookies, chocolate chip. It don't matter at that point.
Okay.
Just like I said, I got a sweet tooth. I'm a sucker for desserts, but I'm not a pie guy.
We're making lemon bars, and my weird one. Admit it's I'm not fishing for it, but like I end up with there's usually like a cake.
Yeah.
On Thanksgiving because my birthday overlaps.
Oh,
usually.
Okay. Hey, lucky guy. Cake and Thanksgiving.
I mean, is it though?
Yeah.
Really? Is it? I don't know.
I would buy myself a cake. My fiance does not like cake. I said, I don't just buy me a cake. I'll eat the whole damn thing.
Oh yeah. I would do that too.
Come
I would
on
totally
now.
do that. I mean, it would take a couple days, but I would get through it. So, okay. So what do you sent your little thing. What are you picking? Okay. We agreed on the ham. We save $1 on your little graphic. We save $1.
So we get $20. All right. I pulled it up here. Let me
Sounds
pull
like
it up.
we have
just
some
so
similar tastes. So I think we can come up with a good recommendation.
Danny's got this up on the screen for you guys too here. Okay. Building your Thanksgiving fantasy lineup with $20.
I like the ham.
Main course. I'm going with ham.
Yep. I'm with you.
I'm going with mashed potatoes.
Yep. I like mashed potatoes.
I'm going stuffing. That puts me right there.
You can save a little bucks with the au gratin.
No, I was thinking about it, but that saves me. I think I'm at $14 right now.
Okay.
Mac and cheese.
Stuffing
it puts
is
me
a
at
yes.
19.
See, we got to splurge. We got to save somewhere. But we can skip on the pie. Just go to the pecan pie. Go to the bottom. That's the best of the pies.
Look at the very bottom there. I'm going to go with the $1 Hawaiian rolls to wrap up my $20 budget. Bang.
Okay. I can live with that. I will probably go with the pecan pie, but otherwise, yeah, we nailed it.
See I'm not a pecan. I just can't stand nuts. Like pecans, crunchy. Like it just didn't like, I would much rather I'm not even a pumpkin pie guy.
I really don't like pumpkin pie.
But I would eat it.
Yeah. Or you can go with the cornbread.
Like I said, you could go to Village Inn, get you a peanut butter cup pie that they
still
have
exist.
Oh God, it is fire.
Oh, okay. Is that all they do now? Is just pie?
It's not. They do pie and breakfast, but I think Village Inn is dying off. So it's
like I didn't even know
if you see one standing, it's like a hidden gem. Yeah.
Okay. But make sure to check that out.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy all the football, actually a whole bunch of sports. This is a great time to be a sports fan. You name it. Basketball, hockey, college basketball is underway. I mean, all sorts of the good stuff's happening. So take care of yourselves. We want to see you back here. Danny Bailey makes everything work. And for Cody Rourke, I'm Sean Drotar and the entire Mile High Sports team. Thanks for tuning in. Have a happy, safe holiday weekend. We'll catch you next time right here.
Feliz Navidad.
That's next.